We're going to discuss this week's Parsha, Parshas Chayei, and the Parsha itself is named after the passing, the Petira of Sarah Imenu, the wife of Avraham. And it's an interesting opening to the Parsha because it's a very long story about Avraham buying a piece of land to use as a mausoleum, in this case, not really a cemetery, but a place for people to bury their closest people. It's a very, very particular type of piece of land he's looking to buy. And when you look at the story itself, it sounds like something was getting pulled over on Avraham a little bit. Some of the Mefarshim say that because Avraham doesn't approach anybody in particular to get a place to bury his wife. He approaches the leadership of the children of Ches, right, the Hittites, as we know them. And there is somebody who points out that he should approach this guy, Ephron, another one of the Chiti who lived there. And Ephron is basically, he butters up the situation. He says, I have this plot of land, and there's this cave in it. That should do fine, right? Yeah, that's good. But it sounds like the whole thing shouldn't have been done in this way. It could have been done in a better way. The Parshas point out that Ephron asked a lot of money for it. So let's take a little deeper dive into the situation and understand a little bit about purchasing practices, especially in the way the Talmud understands it, and how it was impacted by Ephron's behavior. So this is the Mishnah in Bava Basra. This is in page 68b. And this is Hamoicheres Hasadeh, if you want to sell a field. So you sell the field, okay? And you don't specify what's included in the sale. So what's included? I'm selling you the field. What's included? It says Mocheres Avonim Shehem L'Tzarka. You include all the stones that are part of the field. The Esakanim Shebakerem Shehem L'Tzarka, right? And also, if you have a vineyard and you have these lines in which the vines grow up, those are included. Okay? And whatever produce that's currently attached to the ground. And also a small area that is left to sow enough seed in there to fill up Beis Rova. Right, and it goes on. There's the Vesa Charuv, Vesulas Shikma, right? Some type of Shikma is a type of tree. We call it sycamore. Okay, but certain things that aren't included, right? And those things are all excluded. So the Gemara asks a very important question on 69b. Okay, so it asks a very simple question. It wants to know, Mina Hane Mile, where does this come from that all of these things are not included in the sale of a field? Okay, so that's what we're going on. Actually, it's actually asking this question specifically on. It asks this question specifically on Acharv Hamurkav and Sadan Hashikma. Why are these things not included in the sale, which is the second half of the Mishnah? Okay, and so it points out, it says, Rav Yehuda Rav says, it's a pasuk, Vayakam Sdei Ephron Asher B'Machpelah. Okay? So, and it says that Ephron sold the field that was in Machpelah. Okay? And we mentioned other things there, is also Alpnei Mamre and so on. And it says, then the Gemara continues, is Mishit Sarich L'Gvul Saviv. Okay? It needs all of these things around it, okay, and all the fields that had trees in it were all part of the sale, and so those were included in the sale. So what does this mean? So Yatsu Elu, so these type of trees, She'ein Srich L'Gvul Saviv, they don't need all this field around it. So and it says Amarav Meshashim Mikal Mitzarim Minatayre. So here we see that the boundaries are set up by the Torah for what's included in the sale. So we needed all of this explanation of the Torah to tell us that this is how a proper sale of a field would go. So, this is why it's laid out so specifically this way. That's what the Talmud is teaching us. Now, the question is, what about Ephron? What is Ephron doing? Right? So we know that he sells a Machpelah, that's before the city of Mamre, and it has the field and the cave and all the trees, right? And everything around it. So those trees that don't need it, we're seeing from here that we learned a lot from this transaction. So Rashi points out, and quoting the Midrash, he says that Ephron was very, very stingy. Well, not just stingy, but he was trying to pump up this field as to say that this is the best field you're going to get. And so what we're seeing from Ephron's behavior is that he was including a ton of material when he said, I want a place to bury my wife. It's like, well, listen, I got to give you a place. You got to put the burial there. But he includes a ton of other things, more so than what Avraham was asking. And so Ephron himself, the Midrash says in Bereshis Rabbah here, and Rashi brings it, he says that Ephron's name is written without a vav to signify that he was diminished. Okay, and this is in Pasuk Tes Zion, right? We're in 23:16, and it says V'yishma Avraham Ephron. So Avraham accepted Ephron's request. V'yishkol Avraham leEphron es hakesef asher diber ba'oznei v'neches. Right, and they're at this hearing. It's literally a hearing. They use the word hearing, and they're at a hearing for the sale of the field. And so Rashi points out that Ephron's name is written the second time when he gets the money without the second vav. Okay, because he was going to do a lot, and then he did very little. And the Gemara is saying that he should have taken a little bit of money. Right, they should have taken a smaller amount of money, and he was asking for it, but instead he asked for a lot more. Okay, and so this is something that they have an issue with. Rashi points out is that he was asking for the larger currency, and not just the regular currency. Okay, and so it was worth almost 100 times more. Okay, and so that's why he asked for money that was over the socher, that was current money being traded in that area. So even though we see clearly from this case that you need to have all of these markers to identify it, Ephron was going above and beyond the actual normal transactions, and therefore he is described as being less of a person for it. And he's considered not being as good a person for it. He's considered less. He's Ephron minus a vav. So there's an interesting theme in the Parsha all throughout the whole Parsha, which is to say that people are demonstrating themselves to be a little bit less than what they could have potentially have been. So we open the Parsha by seeing that Ephron, yes, he did need to identify that this field was in a certain place, and the trees needed to go with the field, and certain trees are included, and even the Talmud seems to agree with that. But the biggest problem is that he seems to imply in front of his whole gathered assembly of Hittites that this he's going to get this was the amount of money that it should be paid. This is how much it's actually worth, when it wasn't. So the Midrash basically is pointing out that he became less of a person as a result of it. Okay, and then we find that one more time in the Parsha over here, interestingly enough. So we find that Eliezer is sent on a mission to get a wife for Yitzchok. And Avraham is very particular about the instructions that he gives him. He says, you need to go to my family's house. You need to take a wife for him from there. And then there's don'ts. Don't take him there with you. Don't take a daughter from amongst the Canaanites amongst whom I dwell. Even the righteous ones, like Mamre and all those guys. Don't take from them. So he gives very specific instructions. And the Talmud says that when Eliezer gets there, he makes a request that is not appropriate. He makes a request that's not the right way to do it. So Avraham is very specific. But what does Eliezer say? He says that here I am, right? I'm standing by the water, and I'm going to do a little test. I want to find a nice girl. We're going to do a little chesed test. So the chesed test is going to be this. I want her to come and offer the camel something to drink, right? So she's going to come and bring out the water. So he says, oh, and the one who comes out, he says, I'm going to give a drink to you, right, and I'm going to give to your camels. That I see is clearly the one who would be the right one for my master. So the Talmud is mispalel. What kind of a request is this? This is such a big mistake. He says it's so open-ended. The Gemara points out, what if somebody who came out to him would have been unfit? How would this have been even possible for him to do that? So it says that Akash Baruch Hu blessed him by giving him a proper response. What does it mean they gave him a proper response? He brought out someone from his own father's home, from Besuel, who was from the son of Nachor. Right? We see that this was one of his cousins. This would have been fine, but Eliezer didn't ask in a proper way. So there's a little bit of insight that one needs to take into this, because Eliezer is considered to be not exactly fully involved in the thought processes of what the Hashem would want for the Jewish nation. Because what's interesting is that the Gemara also points out that Eliezer, when he makes his requests, he sounds almost like someone who normally would engage in divination. And divination is prohibited, right? Lo yakosim ksamim, right? One shouldn't be turning to divinations. Is a prohibition later on in Parshas Mishpatim. We don't do that. But Eliezer is somebody who engages in that, and in fact, the Talmud points out in Avodah Zarah, says, if you don't make a statement like Eliezer, you haven't violated the prohibition on divination. So, what is this telling us? It tells us that the reason why he didn't ask properly is because he doesn't have that right frame of mind and the right frame of reference about how to do these things properly and how to do these things correctly. Eliezer, while being a trusty servant of Avraham, and he is, and the whole episode is significant for how sure and true he was to his master's requests, but he still doesn't see himself as being one who is removed from the ways of the non-Jewish idolatrous world. And that's sort of the problem with Ephron as well, is that they don't see themselves as being part of this bigger picture. They see themselves as, hey, I am doing a big favor to a very well-respected and righteous person. I want to be part of that righteous person's circle, whether I do it right or I don't do it right. And that's really the biggest problem with Ephron. Even though Ephron is doing a lot of proper things, he's selling the field properly, he's giving it proper boundaries, and we even see that we learn from his sale how to do a good sale. So what's wrong with Ephron? Right? On the outside, it looks like he's doing the right thing. He's putting on a show at the hearing, right? In front of all the brethren of B'nai Ches. And in fact, the Midrash Rabbi even points out, it says B'nai Ches is said 10 times. Why does it say 10 times? Because the idea is that one who benefits at tzaddik is like one who fulfills the Aseres Adibros. It's a hint. It's a hint that doing the right thing for a righteous person, to help him do the mitzvah of burying his wife, was a big, big mitzvah. And so too over here, helping find the wife for Yitzchok was a very big mitzvah for Eliezer. We see what was missing from Eliezer. Eliezer still had retained a lot of the idolatrous practices of not believing fully in the actions of Hashem, and he believed he had to turn to things like divination in order to make these things happen. I have to somehow have this verbal component in my request that makes things happen, that I attune myself to the right magic that will make these things occur. And as a result, he misses out very punctually on how to make a proper prayer, and he does more of a I'm going to make this happen through my investing myself in prayer, and not because he's actually asking for Kadosh Baruch Hu. And these small differences make up all the difference. And what we should learn from these two cases in Chayei is that what the world lost with Sari Menu is something that could not be found in the people that were around Avraham. They had to go back to his family to find that true chesed. It was something that was deeply embedded in Avraham's family that was not being found in the nations around them. That is a deep appreciation of understanding that there's something greater than you that makes things happen. And when you do the right thing, like the Rambam says. When you do what is right, because it is right, and then the right, all the blessings that are supposed to come will come as a result of it, not because of things that I do. I'm going to make my efforts into it, but it's because of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that He'll make these things happen. And if one gets caught in these ways of the idolaters, that I have to somehow be the predictor, and the predictions belong to me, and I'm the smart one, and I'm the one who knows how to ask for lots of money. If that's the attitude, then the attitude is that if you think you can do it without Hashem, then you can try without Hashem and see how the world goes when you leave it to only your understanding and only to the way that you think things should happen. But if you believe that everything has a purpose and the world is functioning in a just way and things happen for a reason and things are just and true and loving and kind, then you will continue to echo those behaviors. And that's what we want people to see, that they should be echoing justice and kindness, because those are the things that Hashem uses to continue to guide the world, to continue to lead the world in the right direction, and not leaving it up to people thinking that they know how to predict and know how to adjust things on their own. Have a good Shabbos.